pleasure to hand the meeting over to Paula, who will be sharing for 35, 40 minutes on step 10. Lovely to have you with us, Paula. It's all yours.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I'm Paula Parton. I'm an alcoholic. I see Sonny, so happy. Hi. I got friends on here, sponsees on here, friends I haven't met too. So, your sweet faces. I'm so glad to be here talking about one of my favorite steps. It's really hard not to admit people. You know what I mean? When I'm on this, it's so hard, but I'm going to try not to control the meeting. Just pay attention to my talk. So I'm here to talk about step 10 in a quick 30-ish minutes. Continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. And so I want to say that step 10 is one of the tools that we use to continue to live in recovery and not step back. And the best way to know if we are back in an unspiritual place and not a place of recovery can be summed up on page 52 in the big book, and people call them the bedevilments. So I'm just going to read you the bedevilments. So this is how we feel when we're not doing a daily 10 and 11. This is it. All right. We were having trouble with personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. We were a prey to misery and depression. We couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be a real help to other people. The opposite, the very exact opposite of the bedevilments is in the 12 by 12. And it's on page 99, and it's in page, it's on step 11. And we refer to it in our program as the St. Francis Prayer. So I am going to read it because it's, you're living, you're doing a 10 and 11 if this is your mindset. Here it goes. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth, that where there is doubt, I may bring faith, that where there is despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds. It is by forgiving that one is forgiven. It is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Amen. My sobriety date is October 29th, 1979. In October, which seems like forever ago, I celebrated 46 years of sobriety. And I promise you this, that if I had not begun to do a daily 10 and 11, that would no longer be my sobriety date. Because for a ridiculously and embarrassingly long time into my sobriety, I thought I'd just get done drinking and go to AA dances, we're good. But no, I was sober. I was in constant conflict with people. I was fighting with people in my head who weren't even in the room. People got free space in my brain for the littlest thing. And it's almost like it was a habit. Like I let go of one, but it wasn't actually letting go. It was just a new, more juicy resentment took its place. Sober. That's how I was. Nobody can live. Nobody can be useful, which is the point. I remember when I was new and I heard that phrase, that we are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. And I thought, that's it. That's it. That's the goal. Every day I would wake up, oh, am I happy? Like self-absorbed from the get. And now I know that's not true. The goal is not happiness, nor joyousness, nor freedom. It's the byproduct of service. And I can only be able to serve if I follow the exact formula of the 12 steps. We can't get a chocolate cake by following 11 and a half steps. We want the whole freaking amazing thing. We want the whole thing. We got to follow it completely. Now, I'm lazy. To this day, I'm lazy. So I spent a long time trying to find a shortcut. Don't do that. You'll make a lot of enemies, and it doesn't work. So I'm going to talk just for a little bit about my story, so I can like, I guess, talk about how I walked through, because there's no way to do a 10-step unless we've learned how to do an inventory in the 4-step. So this doesn't make me alcoholic, but my mother was an alcoholic. That's how life was growing up. Sometimes that just means for people that dinner was burned or something. For me, that meant people got in our house who shouldn't be around little girls, that there was hunger and things happening, violence happening, that, shouldn't be around for a girl, so, or a little boy either. But that's just how it was after the dash of my poor mother's alcoholism. And so when I got to you, I got sober when I was 17, and I got to you, and my desire to drink was lifted immediately. I am convinced that I wouldn't be sober today if God hadn't removed the desire to drink from me immediately, because I had really nothing to take its place. I didn't believe in a God. I didn't believe you guys had anything to teach me. I thought the Big Book was stupid, and I was going to write my own version. I couldn't get a sponsor because, honestly, I couldn't find anybody smarter than me. It was just really hard. Just craziness, man. But I'll tell you what nabbed me and kept me until the miracle and the light could shine is you guys were so beautiful. You were so safe. There was a light here that I could see. I could sense it. I'd never seen a place of hope and light. I'd never seen that. I'm a juvenile delinquent kid. I lived in institutions, man, in foster homes. That's my story. Incarcerated, bewildered, and enraged. That's how you can sum up my years of drinking. But man, you showed this kindness, man, and it grabbed me, and so I just kept staying, and I kept not drinking and not using any of the cousins or hors d'oeuvres of alcohol either. And because of that, I owe a great debt. Girls like me who grow up like that, we don't make it. We don't have a statistic that we live successful lives and become whole and useful. That's not how it goes with girls like me, except I got the miracle of you and got to be refamilied, refoundationed, re-raised, and I'll never be done paying back my debt to Alcoholics Anonymous. And now my oldest son, who's 33, is sober for a year and 7 months. And so you guys had me before that. Now you basically own me. Anything you want at any time, of course, yes. So when I got to you though, man, and the living, crazy and sober did not work anymore. I had to grab onto these steps in the Big Book and a sponsor who would actually take me through the steps in the Big Book and the other AA literature. And so I began the journey, and I had an organ of hate, and resentment and self-pity, which is as dangerous as resentment because it feels so good and there seems to be some rational thought to it. But I had those things and they were going to kill me. It's like it was an organ, and enough of an outside issue would happen, and the doom of the dark, that came along with that kind of a life, or the tics and the anxiety would come, and it was overwrought. My rage was overwrought, and I knew its real source. And so I had to begin the work because going back was no longer an option for me. And in inventory work, I began to find freedom in the 4th column of the first part of the 4th step. I began to find freedom. And in the 10th step, I'm telling you, like in my nightly or my daily, I don't think the spot check inventory gets as much love as it should in our day. I mean, it basically saves our ass. And sorry to cuss. But, because because I do pray in the morning that God be in charge of my thoughts, and then I do my daily prayers, then I'm open to God showing me through the day, pause, or what's going on here? You're mad at somebody, but was that really what it is? The goal of the 10th step is that I can get to a place that who's ever annoying or whatever's annoying or difficult or hard or hurtful or awful, that I can get to the place through my inventory process that I can say, me too. Me too. Have I ever thought I was the, coolest person and had to talk about it all the time? Yes, I have. Have I stolen something from somebody? Oh, yes, I have. Have I been cagey? Have I been unsafe? I have been all those things. And I'm going to tell you about the first huge lesson in the whole me too, man, me too. And that standing in somebody else's shoes and seeing how I'm guilty of the same thing. It may not be the exact same action, but give me a few years and it could be. So I'm the youngest of 5 kids, 1 boy, 4 girls. I'm the youngest of 4 unwanted daughters. And I don't have any emotion about this. I'm just telling you how it is. The work in the book and the help that all that led me to I'm clean and clear. And God's just using it to help others now, which is the point of it. So, and like I said, my mom let people into our home that should not have been around little girls. And I woke her up to help me the first night, and she said, just don't tell anybody. So that might make you mad at her, but here's what I want you to know. That I had to discover and pause and realize who my mom was in that moment. My mom had just survived 17 years of being beaten and raped by my father. I'm a product of one of those. And the day that she told me years and years later, when we were both sober, when she told my father she was pregnant with me, he told her to abort me. And she told that man no, and paid a terrible price. So when I woke her up when I was 8 years old to help me, and she could not help me, she had already saved me once. Helping me was going to eventually have to come through God and Alcoholics Anonymous and any help that has led me to. So my mother did save me. She did not have it in her to save me that night. And I promise you this. When I started drinking when I was 14 years old, I was tracking to drink worse and harder than she ever had. So I know this to be true. You give me 10 more years or less of hard drinking the way that I drank, I could have done the same. I could have done the same and worse. And once I found that freedom, I just felt so sorry for my poor mama. And I didn't even want her to realize it. I didn't even want her to know because of the pain that would cause her. And my mom died with 20 years of sobriety, but when she was 3 years sober, and she was great when she was sober, just so great. And when she was 3 years sober, the people in her little hometown meeting, some guy said the same thing every time. Or some lady just came in to find a man. Or the coffee was awful. Or somebody's always wanting us to put money in the basket. But you see where this is going, man. She was paying attention to the wrong stuff. And she stopped going to AA meetings. And she didn't drink. So I got to see what that life looks like. And I'm telling you, she was far more miserable and difficult to be around in those remaining 17 years of her life when she didn't have alcohol or a God. And I'm telling you, it's a bizarre statistic that I got sober in 1979 at 17 years old, and now I'm 63 years old, and I've stayed sober. The only reason is I got to see it in my mom. So I knew to stick and stay. So she saved my life again. And I only asked her to save it the once. She's already saved it 2 times. Another time is this. I'm married for 28 years now to a really great guy named people in AA call St. Richard, which is hurtful. But anyway, he deserves the name. But he's my second husband. My first husband, I met when we met in the rooms of AA. I was around 12 or 13 years sober. Everybody said, don't marry him. Married him. And it went about as well as everybody had thought it would. Okay, please hear the first part. I knew better and I married him, okay? I was the grown-up on the ground. I set that ball rolling, okay? He got to a place where he was pushing me into walls, pulling out drawers because I'd walk into him, drinking cough syrup, still claiming he was sober. yeah. And my mom and my sisters, I would call them with the horror of the day, you know, what he'd done that day. But I just couldn't see. We had 2 little tiny children by that point, and I just couldn't see how could I put my little children through divorce? How could that be the answer to this? You know, how could God want a divorce for me? And so I was talking to my mom on the phone. She lived 1,000 miles away, and I was starting to tell her what my husband had done that day. And my mother, who'd been beaten for 17 years, finished my sentence for me. And it was like, oh, crap, my mother was just able to finish that scenario for me. And then a nun who I'd become really close to, if you have a resentment against the Catholic Church, put this in your hat. A nun I had been really close to, this cool lady. I said to her, how could it be God's will that I divorce? And this nun, this Catholic nun, said to me, it is not God's will that you be unhappy. So it was those 2 things. But see what my mom did? She saved me 3 times. And I'd only ask her to do it the once. I'd gone to an orange tree expecting an apple. She only had oranges. And come on, man, you know in your drinking, I know in my drinking, man, there were nights I just leave me alone. Because Bill Wilson himself said we don't have one higher power, we have 2. Alcohol and God. And only God. Whatever you want to call that. The something with a capital S. The inexplicable with a capital I. The universe with a capital U. Or Alcoholics Anonymous, also capitals. Whatever you call that. Only God is more powerful than alcohol and more powerful than alcoholism. I'm just going to say a few things about how what helps me in my 10th step. It's a practice, like meditation. It means we have to do it. We're not going to be great at it all the time, but we have to do it. We cannot be helpful to other people unless we do. And the point of this is to be helpful to other people. This work, this daily inventory, daily 10 and 11, I can't really talk about one without the other, but I'm not going to step on any other speaker's toes. But here we go. It changed the entire question of my entire life. The question of my life, all the time growing up, all the time being a self-centered alcoholic, all the time being a sober self-centered alcoholic. The question always was, what about me? What about me? Or somebody has something good. What about me? Where's mine? What about me? This is the work that changed that whole question from what about me to this. How can I help? And that changes everything. This 10-step work, the ability to pause, the ability to see, me too, man, the great gift of compassion, the great gift of being able to stand in someone else's shoes, man, see it from their viewpoint. These are paths to freedom. And I mean, I don't know another way, and I've looked to get this. I mean, I know there's other practices, beautiful spiritual practices that people do that aren't in AA, and it works just as well for them. For me, this is what works for me. I had a sponsee when I lived in a whole other state, and she had 3 little girls, and she came in to us after a serious attempt at dying. And she got out of the facility and treatment center, and then came to the meetings, and she met me, and she asked me to sponsor her. And and she just hated herself because in her 30 days of treatment, she'd had a little fling with one of the residents. I know, it's so unusual. Anyway, so she just hated herself for having done that. And so, we began the work, and a couple years later, she divorced that man she'd been married to, that she'd had the 3 little girls with, and gotten a new relationship, and they were together about a year, engaged, and then my sponsee called me and said that she'd found out that her fiance had been screwing around on her the entire time. And I mean, I'm totally imperfect. One thing about me, good or bad, I still don't know, is I'm blindingly loyal. I'm blindingly protective. And I'm like, how could he do that to you? You're amazing. Where does he live? Like, I'm ready to go, And she said to me, I did the same thing. I said, it is not the same thing. She said, yes, it is. And I had to pause and look at the situation and realize it is the same thing. And then I had to go do a little spot check inventory and like, well, what is up, Paula, with your huge reaction to that guy who did the exact same thing that my sponsee had done? And with her, I'm protective of her and overlook any defect. And I realized right then that the only difference was love. And from that moment, the new reality for me continues to be that if someone's difficult, annoying, hard, or just if it's me in my head, and they're not really, but it's in my head, all those things, I now ask myself a whole different question. I ask myself as I'm looking or thinking about them, what if I loved them? Then what would I be thinking? Then how would I be talking about them? Then how would I protect them? Then how would I think about them? And that too has been a valuable tool. Not any more valuable than with this thing I'm about to say. I hope I can communicate it well. I've never said it out loud. So I'm sponsored by the fabulous Miss Polly P. And from the podium, she said it 20 million times. She was a drunk mom, like my mom was a drunk mom. And Polly was raising little sons, like my mom was raising all of us. And Polly was abusive. She says it from the podium. She was abusive, neglectful, put them in dangerous situations with dangerous people. So Polly and I, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we were sitting in our living room, and we were just looking at each other, chatting. And I don't remember what we were talking about because it hit us at the exact same time. She said, I am your mom. She's exactly the mother that I hated for having put me in danger or for throwing me away to those men. Polly, though, did this, not exactly, but she was an abusive, drunk mother, too. But with her, anybody comes for her, they're in some big freaking trouble. Now, what's the difference? Love. That's the difference. So my mama gets the same beauty and love as anybody, as Polly, as anybody. I think that's what it means when it says, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. You know how we all have things we regret and are ashamed of. Many. I have many. And I've said to myself many times, and I've heard people say it, if I just hadn't done that, if I just hadn't said that, if it just weren't for that. And we think, well, we can't change the past. I'm here to tell you, this is the step where we can change the past. Because you could have described my mother as an abusive, drunk, neglectful, and all those things would be true. But with this work, where I get to place myself in her shoes, where through a deep 4-step and daily inventory and 11th step, I can feel the pain, her brokenness, and I just feel so lucky I got to stick in AA that I can recall that she did save my life 3 times. So now, what is the same story? My mother was a broken woman who had nothing to protect anyone with. She couldn't even protect herself. The fact that she was able to feed me every once in a while is a miracle. So it's a whole new story when we do this work. I don't know why this came to me, but it is. So I think, okay, stay with me, and it's just my opinion. But so we come here, we've now given up alcohol and their attendant cousins. I feel like, for me anyway, the next 2 big ones were relationships and money. Huge. And relationships, oddly enough, the freedom came through that faster than with money. I had a real defect around money. And I knew the answer was going to be spiritual. And I became open through this work. And God's in charge of time. God has the copyright on time. So God's going to have to be, God decides when stuff's lifted, eased, healed, or not healed, because God might have a use for it. So the biggest freedom came for me when I had an adjustment, a perspective change about money. And I was a single parent by that point with 2 tiny boys that I was raising, and I'd moved here to Illinois, and I made a lot of money, and it was easy. It was commission sales for television advertising, and it was easy for me to make that money. And then I met St. Richard, and he was an editor, so I made over 6 figures. He made $24,000 a year, and I had hated raising my kids by putting them in daycare. I'd hated that, but I'm a single mom, and that's how it rolled. If you're a single mom, that's how it goes. And so he and I fell in love and got married, and we wanted to find a way that I could stay home finally with my children on his $24,000 a year, and we figured it out. So I got to quit my job, man. And my father, who money was everything to him, I'm not slamming him at all. I'm grateful that he had some kind of comfort. Honestly, I am. But my father was furious with me for, quitting such a lucrative job and, all that. And not that I didn't care, but he was pressuring me. But my oldest was 5, and he was in kindergarten, and my 4-year-old was in daycare. And my 5-year-old has an anxiety phobia, a social anxiety phobia, and it was marked even when he was 5 years old. And so every day after school, all his little friends, all the moms who didn't work, stood at the flagpole, and all those little boys got to go play in the afternoon at the school grounds, and my son had to turn around and go the other way and get on the daycare bus. And so the first day that I was going to get to pick up my son like those other moms at the flagpole, I told him, honey, I'm going to be at the flagpole today. You come on out. I'll be right there, and you can go play with all your friends. And so I go there, and I'm so happy, and so I'm standing at the flagpole with all the other moms, and the school empty, the doors open, and you can imagine, all these kids running out happy and playing, and I couldn't find my son. He wasn't in there, so I'm standing at the flagpole. All the kids had come out, and then finally my little son comes out, and he stops, and he's looking around, and his eyes lock on mine, and he has this huge smile, and then he runs off to go play with his friends. And I saw that, and I thought to myself, that was worth $100,000, and I was free. Because you never know, man. Like, sometimes I gotta tell you, man, I got a big life outside of AA too. At least twice as big. I got a big life outside of AA. I have a lot of communities I'm active in and close to, and that are important to me, foundational to me, as important almost as AA, because I know where my butter is. I know what saves my life. But the theme of this, man, all we do with this work, we've got to stay freaking clean. And it's in 10 and 11, man. We have to stay clean, or the light is not going to be able to penetrate. We will not see the perspective change. We will not know the compassion. We have to do it. Start with 2 freaking minutes at night. Start there. See what happens, man. But God blesses the willingness. So you may think you're just doing this thing and it's just you talking to the air. So what, man? God blesses the willingness. And since the theme is you never know, it could be when you're picking up your kid on a playground. It could be when you're talking to your mom on a telephone. You don't know. But if we're not clean and clear, we're never going to know. And we're going to stay in the bedevilments. I don't have that much more to say. I think I'm just going to say maybe one more thing. And I don't know why this is coming to me. I've never said this in a meeting before. Here we go. And I'm not going to say any names, so don't try to guess the names. So, some years ago, a friend of mine in AA who owns a very lucrative business asked me to go into business with her, and I did. And I was excited to do so. And after some months of doing this, It just wasn't going to work. And this woman, who's a beautiful, amazing human being in Alcoholics Anonymous, this woman would have her story of why our venture didn't work, and I would have my story about why this venture didn't work. But here's the thing, none of us cared, because we have a primary purpose. We didn't even need to talk about it. We're good, it's gone, moving forward. In any other scenario where neither of us were working a daily 10 and 11, it would have been resentment, and probably affected what meetings we go to, what conferences we go to, nothing, not even an inch on either of us to be concerned about such things. Just moving forward. A few years later, she and I were at a conference together, and she got sick, and so there was only one answer for it. So she canceled her flight home. I canceled my flight home. We rented a car, and I drove her across the country so she could be home because it was safer to do it that way. Nope, no, I didn't care. I'm the perfect servant to do that. I'm a road tripper. I know that road like the back of my hand. Easy peasy, nothing. And I thought, great, end of it, no problem. It wasn't the end of it because God's in charge of all things. So when my son, who's sober now, 1 year and over 1 year and 7 months, when he needed a bed fast, I called my friend because she had told me of a place in the city where she lives, and how that place is supposed to work is you show up and you got to wait sometimes days before a bed comes open. She got a bed for my boy, and I'm telling you, I can trace that back to the fact that I work a daily 10 and 11 because I'm clean and clear, and how can I help? So that's all I'm going to say on this. I just can't urge you enough to try, man. Jump in and try. Open the 10th step. It's not that many paragraphs in the 12 by 12 is good too. In the big book, and do what it says. It's so easy. It really is so easy. And ask God to direct your thinking, man. And the light and the perspective will come on a daily basis. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Paula. So much gratitude. I've